Well, to look at the implication of this around the world, joining us from Abuja studio is Dr. Tokpe Fasua. He's an economist. Thank you for joining us. Good to see you. Let's begin. I mean, there appears to be so many factors driving this global report from Davos. Which one in particular will impact sub-Saharan Africa, Nigeria, and what can we do to lift us out of it?
Right, thank you for inviting me. So we have quite a few factors, as you've noted. I mean, there's the global inflation going on, and of course, locally here, we also have our own multidimensional inflation, if you ask me. We're just basically absolutely just crawling out of the COVID pandemic, and the lockdowns, never before seen type of lockdowns, and then this, and of course, you have the Russian-Ukraine war, and of course, the structural problems with our economy still remain. When you look at the structure of the Nigerian economy, trade, for example, import and export, you'd find some very shocking numbers there, because our main export, apart from crude oil and gas, our main exports is things like sesame seeds and oil seeds and sorghum and stuff like that. We get about $380 million from that every year. And then you have cocoa. We have about $280 million. But when you look at the imports, you find that apart from technological imports, which is actually the bulk of what we import every year, the phones, the laptops, the softwares, and so on, and of course the manufactured goods and the machines and what have you, that we're talking about 35 billion or thereabout, and of course we still are stuck with importing petrol and diesel and all of that. The next thing you'll see that we import about 2.7 billion this time around, dollars worth of grains. And so you begin to think about Ukraine and Russia, where we get about 40–45% of wheat from every year. We import still about 970 million. Now compare that to cocoa and the other seeds and all of that we export. 970 million worth of fish and crustaceans. Another 870 million worth of milk and dairy. So, you take only one of those and they probably just eclipse the entire exports that we take out of Nigeria, given that our crude oil export is also countered by our import of petroleum. So, I think that the reports and the projections coming from Davos is a little bit lenient on Africa, especially sub-Saharan Africa. I mean, we can't even be compared with the economy like Egypt anymore. Egypt gets quite a bit of, dollars from tourism, and they've repositioned their medical sector, their construction sector, and they're growing at about 8%. And look at where we are. So, I mean, we're in a very bad situation. I think that if we are not being alarmed by the global inflation and, of course, the threats of a global recession coming out of Davos, we ought to be alarming ourselves.
We've lost a chance for global economic recovery, sustenance. We're seeing what our central bank did yesterday in terms of the interest rate.
Oh, yes. The central bank was constrained, or rather the Monetary Policy Committee, because since September 2020, almost 2 years, the rates have been left at 11.5. You begin to wonder if there's anything they could do, or if it's going to just remain that way forever. And of course, recently, inflation started ticking up back from the 15% level to 16.8 or thereabout, meaning that that rings alarm bells. Is it going to continue? And so the MTC, under the central bank, was constrained to do something. I'm a little bit more radical in my economic thinking. I would have thought that rather than increasing interest rate, they ought to have reduced it, because in increasing interest rate to 13% from 11.5%, we're talking about the monetary policy rate, which the banks, the commercial banks, are supposed to take a cue from that. In doing that, you are going to damage the 3.11% growth that we have, and in fact, that growth moved down from quarter to quarter. We were seeing 3.11 down from about 3.82 or thereabout, percent. And when you increase interest rate, what you're saying in effect is that borrowers, manufacturers, producers will have to borrow at a much higher cost. And of course, the lending rates in Nigerian banks today is anything from 25% to, in some instances, up to 35%. So you're slowing down the economy. So I'm of the opinion that we oughtn't be slowing down our economy. However, the pressure on the central bank is not even only from local, issues of inflation, but also is international from lenders and the multilateral organizations who have always insisted that we need to increase rates. I mean, increasing to a 16.8%. I mean, to the inflation at 16.8% and the rates at 13%. It's not looking good. If we look at Ghana just next door, you will see that even their consistent increase of their monetary policy rate up to about 19% now has not slowed down their inflation. They're still at 23%, about 23.6%. Now, what that means is that African countries, especially sub-Saharan African countries, need to stop reading the good old economic textbooks and think for themselves. If we don't think for ourselves, we're going to just keep rigmaroling and damaging our economy. Our inflation is multifaceted. Some of it is coming from the demand side because central banks have had to really intervene in economies as a result of COVID, and they're intervening more. Even this morning, I saw a report, the central bank said, look, we're going to even push out maybe about 1 trillion naira for some more interventions with farmers and so on. And now, not all of these interventions are backed by productivity because in the same vein, the central bank is also begging some of the farmers to please repay some of the monies they've borrowed because it's not supposed to be a national cake. So because of that, if you're not matching what you're giving out back to back with productivity, enhance in society, growth in GDP, and all of that, if the farmers and whoever else is going to come back to you with stories and say, sorry, floods packed all the rice away, we can't do this, we can't do that, and you can't really force them. Therefore, you're going to be seeing such monies hitting the system directly in terms of money supply, chasing the same goods that are produced. I mean, if we're intervening, for example, with rice, but the price of rice is still rising very much, maybe up to 32,000, 35,000 as we speak. So we need to start thinking and actually proffering, opinions and ideas that are outside the box. As a matter of fact, I was reading something on Reuters, and they adduced that, look, Ghana is likely to shift interest rates up before Nigeria does that because Nigeria does heterodox policies. And I think that those heterodox policies are the ones that have actually helped us a little bit till date. And those heterodox policies are the ones that we perhaps need to think about some more. Because if we want to run it the way the economic textbook says, increase your interest rates so that inflation will slow down. Oftentimes, inflation doesn't go down. The people only suffer. Productivity reduces. GDP stops to grow. And we're supposed to be growing at a much higher rate than we are. So I think that we need to, I hope they are brainstorming somewhere. And I think that the circles in which this brainstorming happens continues to increase to get more ideas from everywhere.
Yeah, and you have said a whole lot. I was going to jump in there and ask, if the present, if the decision by the Central Bank of Nigeria does reflect the present realities that the world is currently going through. We're facing a global food shortage, and of course our economy will be challenged by what's going on with the war in Ukraine. Europe is already being affected. The rest of the world is also being affected. What the CBN is doing now in Nigeria, is it practical when you compare that with what else is happening?
Yes, I mean, I would say it's practical, but what I've just said now, and which I probably would repeat, is that there's a need for the central bank. I mean, of course, there's a monetary policy unit of the economy. Perhaps a lot of people will allege that, hey, you guys are getting involved in fiscal policy now. However, what I've read so far in global economies, every time there's a downturn, the monetary policy unit of the economy seem to move into the fiscal policy because, hey, you can't just keep juggling interest rates and inflation when the economy is on fire. You have to do some more. You have to get out of your shell, out of your box, and do something extra. So yes, it is, but however, it's very, very important for the central bank to also follow the money. and find every way to ensure that whatever it is they're giving out actually adds directly to the GDP by way of boosting production. And that's where the issue is. And of course, they know that they have problems getting some of those monies back as and when due. You know, that means that maybe someone has used the money to do all sorts of things and diverted funds and so on. It shouldn't be seen as national cake. You know, so it is tried. However, we also need to challenge ourselves more, both the central banks, the farmers, the Ministry of Agri, whoever else is a stakeholder here, that look, Nigeria is still cultivating about 30% of its arable land as it is. Nigeria is a very lucky country in terms of topography. And the north of this country is, I mean, like they say, the food basket. There's so much going on. A lot of what I told you, if cocoa comes from the south, you know, if the cocoa comes from the southwest into some southeast states, into Cross River State is a very big state in terms of cocoa. But the vast majority of our export goes from the north. The soya bean, the sorghum, the sesame seed, the fonio, you know, in the crops in which we are doing very well. A lot of it comes from including yam from Benue State, from Kogi State, from some of those places, you know, and a lot of them we don't even capture them because of bottlenecks within the country. We can't even export them through our ports. And again, we need to then begin to, I mean, of course, they end up exporting them through Ghana because it's easier to take things to Ghana from the north of Nigeria through the Ghana port. Our cassava and yam, our hibiscus gets exported through those places because, you know, you send something from Kano to Lagos State for export, you need to give your truck driver maybe 500,000 naira.
We could go on and on with this, Dr. Fashour. Thank you so much for breaking it down for us and helping us understand this better. I appreciate your coming on the program today.
Cheers.